Hello everyone, my name is Edna Njeri. I create lifestyle, wellness, self-improvement and productivity content. So if that interests you, be sure to click the subscribe button. Welcome to episode 3 of my makeup and mindset series, which is a series here on my channel where I get ready, create fun makeup looks while talking about different topics around identity, self-improvement, and even wellness. On this episode, we're going to be talking about boundaries. And as always, I'd like to let you guys know the inspiration behind the topic that I've chosen to talk about. For this topic, the inspiration is actually the podcast. In case you're new here, I co-host a podcast called The Seventh Sense, which is a safe space where we explore, reflect, and share different conversations for the heart, mind, and soul. For season 2 of the podcast, we had a theme around relationships. So throughout the season, we talked about different relationships. And something that came up in every single episode of the podcast was boundaries. From relationships with yourself, to parents, to siblings, to partners, in the workplace, in society, boundaries cut across everything. And so for this video, we're going to be creating this makeup look, which was a bit of a struggle. We're going to be creating this makeup look as we talk about boundaries and how to enforce them, how to reinforce them when they've been disrespected or invalidated, and a whole lot of other things. So with that being said, let us get into it. The look I'm going for is a bit out there, so wish me luck. Okay, so I guess the easiest and most obvious place to start is what even are boundaries. Basically, your boundaries set a guide for where you end and where others start. They separate what you are responsible for from what you aren't responsible for. A simple example of what your responsibility is and what your responsibility isn't would be, it's your responsibility to like yourself. It's not your responsibility to make others like you. If we're to use this as a boundary in real life, how it would play out in a day-to-day scenario would be that because it's my responsibility to like me and what I do, when I'm doing things, I won't be thinking about what anyone else would think of me because I'm doing the thing. You're approaching your day-to-day like, I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm doing this because I need to do it. I'm doing this because it makes me happy, because I like myself, and it's not a key consideration what other people like or don't like that I do. So the thing with boundaries is that they're learned, because if we're being honest, the reality is that most parents don't really value or respect the boundaries of their children. You see kids being forced to do things all the time that you can clearly see that they're uncomfortable doing, clearly see that they don't want to do, that they've said they don't want to do. But adults often don't respect that in kids. So then as you grow up, it's like this transition from how do you go from being someone who never had the right to say no to someone who has strong boundaries. Healthy boundaries. The first thing would be to understand the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy boundary. Basically, boundaries become unhealthy when they are unidirectional, when they're only working one way. An example would be you respect when other people say no, but you yourself are not able to say no. That makes it one-sided and therefore unhealthy. Honestly, like if you relate to that, or if you feel like you have a hard time saying no to people, one way that I like to look at it is sometimes when you're saying, actually most times when you're saying no to someone else, you're actually saying yes to yourself. So that kind of makes it easier for me to think of it, to be more confident to say my no, which is not always easy if we're being honest. Would you rather say no to yourself, or would you rather say no to someone else? And my last makeup and mindset was main character energy, so you get where I'm going with this. I mean, if we really break it down, unhealthy boundaries are basically a lack of boundaries, and that is a form of self-betrayal. And you can usually tell when that's happening because it doesn't feel great. If, for example, you've been, let's say you're psyching yourself up to say no to someone, or to say no to something, or to enforce a boundary of some sort that involves you saying no. And then every time that opportunity presents itself, it's time for you to say the no and to stand up and enforce that boundary. You're not able to do it. It feels like self-betrayal. It doesn't feel good. It feels like you've let yourself down. And that's the thing about feelings and how you feel about things and situations. How you feel during or after or because of a certain interaction can act as a guide of the areas in your life or the relationships or interactions in your life where you need to enforce boundaries. I'm actually pretty nervous about this eye look. Let me just look at it one more time. We're doing purple, period. Yeah, so as I was saying, one of the easiest ways to identify spaces or relationships, even just interactions in your life, where you need to enforce boundaries is tuning into what does and does not feel good. Right now I'm listening to this book called Ask and You Shall Receive by Edna Njeri. And something that they keep mentioning in the book, the moments when you're the most aligned is when you feel good. And that's facts though. Can you tell that this is purple? Because I feel like it looks like black. Maybe we'll lighten it a bit. Why I say that that's facts is because I don't know if you guys relate to this, but I have had friends or people in my life where after I interact with them, or even while I'm interacting with them, I just feel icky. Like I've had friendships, which I mean, thankfully since then I've been able to detach from, where I would feel drained after being with around these people, or I would just feel icky being around them. That tells me something. That tells me something about that friendship, and that tells me something about what my gut is feeling. And it's telling me that I need to do something about it because I don't want a repeat of that feeling to keep happening over and over and over. It's completely natural for us to have different feelings about the different interactions that we have. It's essential that you pay attention to that feeling. Who do you feel you're best around? Who do you feel you're most drained around? That's gonna tell you something about boundaries. Because if you're consistently feeling drained after spending time with someone, or feeling like your energy is thrown off when you're around them, that feeling is telling you something, and it's possibly calling for a boundary. So if you've now identified like areas in your life where you want to set boundaries, how do you go about setting these boundaries? As with most things, self-awareness is the first step. Okay, I think I'm gonna pause, go put on some sellotape just so that I can have the shape of the wing down, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Put some sellotape just so that at least we have somewhat of an even shape of the liner. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, how you feel. So yeah, based on how you feel, self-awareness is the first step in determining your boundaries. First of all, the people who make you feel like you're being dramatic, or you're being overbearing or annoying, or any negative thing because of your boundaries, are the reason why you need boundaries. And that's because boundaries create guidelines or limits of how people can behave towards you. So if someone's making you feel like this is an issue, it's because they want to be able to move however they want, treat you however they want, and not have it challenged. The first thing you want to consider is what is completely non-negotiable to you and what you're willing to compromise on. And with this, I want to say that boundaries are so personal. Like, even with one person, 3 of us can have a completely different relationship with this person. 3 of us can have completely different boundaries with this person. Like, I can't sit here and tell you these are the boundaries you need to form. And so if this video sounds a bit general, it's because I'm just trying to really touch on the basics and give you guys just an overview because I can't sit here and tell you what to do. So once you already know what your wants and your needs are, you need to be able to clearly and honestly communicate your needs. And again, this happens as you develop them, because we are consistently growing, we are consistently evolving. Let's say I met you like 5 years ago. I have changed so much. Haven't you changed so much in the past 5 years? So you need to be able to communicate your wants honestly and clearly as you develop them. I'm just gonna buff this out a little bit with a lighter purple. So, as you may have noticed in the last clip, we had a power outage because this is Kenya, KPLC, you know the vibes. So I just took the time to continue blending. I apologize that I missed that part. I mean, if you guys want to see, once I get better at it, I'll probably do a video playing around with some colors. But now we can move on to my lashes and etc. So yeah, boundaries are extremely personal. And the other thing was that as we evolve, so do our boundaries. So 5 years ago, I may have been cool with some behavior or some people even. The point was, don't be afraid to adjust your boundaries as they evolve. And as you get more comfortable with them, don't be nervous about enforcing them early in the relationships that you're now building. The more I get to know myself and the more I change, the more sure I am when it comes to certain things. And so the easier it is for me to call something out. Whereas previously I may have been going around in circles and just being nervous. As you change, your friends should be able to understand that you've changed because they've changed too. Also, something that I found that makes it easier is using I statements. Being assertive about it and you're using an I statement and you're not being like projecting or attacking them for doing whatever they want to do. Another thing on the issue of assertiveness and the I statements, something that happens sometimes is when you're trying to adjust or reinforce the boundary is people have opinions. But as we said in my last makeup and mindset, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. And so it's important to let people know that your boundaries are non-negotiable. And again, in being assertive in that way, you can still use the I statements. For example, be like, I appreciate your input, but this is my decision. And that's really it. You don't need to explain further. This is something that does get easier with time because saying no to my friends when I was 18 and saying no to my friends now in my 20s is completely different. Like, now I don't feel like I really owe anyone anything, so I'm not sitting there overthinking, being like, oh, now what will they say, what will they think. I'm kind of really chill about all that. That's another thing about boundaries. They definitely get easier to implement with time. Something else when it comes to setting healthy boundaries that I've seen is that it's okay if someone gets angry. You should not feel guilty for saying no to something or someone because of their reaction, but in the same breath, it's a two-way street. You respect their no's, they respect your no's. It's a healthy boundary, society, community relationship. Because the same way that your boundaries are valid, their boundaries are also valid. So save yourself the stress of feeling like you need to please everyone, because it's just not possible. I feel like I've talked quite a bit about our boundaries with others. I'd like to also talk a bit about how other people set boundaries with us and how to navigate that. When it comes to other people's boundaries, one of the most obvious ways to approach them is looking at cues. Someone's body language will really tell you a lot about how they are feeling about a situation, a person, a comment. Because it's common to even see like someone, let's say, get hugged by someone else and you can just tell that they're uncomfortable. So cues are an easy way to tell. But then again, because we do not read minds, you can just ask. That was relatively painless. I'm not gonna lie, boundaries can be kind of annoying in terms of like getting to a space where you've been able to be consistent with them, you've been able to be clear on what's gonna fly, what's not gonna fly anymore in your friendships and everything. But at the same time, there's so many benefits of having healthy boundaries. When you have healthy boundaries, you can have stronger relationships. Because when you're able to communicate and therefore honor your wants and needs, then that allows you to comfortably, like you'll be comfortable in a relationship first of all. So then you're able to show up as the most authentic version of yourself because you know you're honoring yourself. And so you're confident, you're comfortable. Everyone wins, literally everyone wins. Speaking of relationships, you'll also have a healthier relationship with yourself, which as we all know sets the basis for all other relationships, all other interactions, simply because you trust yourself more. You know that if something doesn't sit right with you, you're gonna speak up about it. Also, another major one is less burnout. When you're trying to do a lot of things and be a lot of things to a lot of different people without stating your boundaries, then it just leaves people with room for a lot of unrealistic expectations of the roles that you can play in their lives, the situations that they can come to you about. You need to make it clear to everyone. How far you're willing to go for them when you're not able to come through for them, because that's also allowed in friendship. If I'm going through something, I should be able to be like, take the time to deal with my own thing so that when I'm coming to help you with yours, you have my full support, attention, like I'm really able to show up for you because I showed up for myself. The last thing I want to talk about is how to reinforce your boundaries when, let's say, either they have been disregarded or they were not previously stated. As I said earlier, we're consistently learning ourselves, we're consistently evolving. And so there may be certain behavior or treatment that we previously would have accepted and been fine with, but then now we've gotten to the point where that just doesn't fly anymore and we're not just gonna have that. And you should be able to honor that. In situations where you feel like this is the case and that this is actually what's happened, you're warranted to communicate your new or adjusted boundaries. That's step one. You can never feel guilty for boundaries. It can be really weird. Like it can feel almost like you're being annoying sometimes when you keep or you need to speak on your boundaries. Let's say it's something that's come up before and then now you have a different say on it. It can just feel really weird. It's just not the most comfortable thing. But then at the same time, if you don't speak on the boundary and you continue moving like that, you still find yourself in another uncomfortable situation. So it's just like, what would you rather have? You need to prioritize clearly and honestly communicating your boundaries. And when it comes to communicating this to someone, it really depends on your relationship and how you two communicate, how you handle things. You know how we talk about like love languages? Different people need to hear apologies in different ways. Corrected behavior like cuts across the board, but there's different ways in which people like to hear apologies. And in the same way, in different relationships, there's different ways that you communicate. So in whichever way that you communicate to this person, you just need to make sure that however you word it, it is clear and it is honest. And this doesn't mean that you need to sugarcoat it. You do not need to sugarcoat it. Sugarcoating it is the opposite of being clear and honest, actually. So it's just taking into account when you feel the most heard by this person, when you feel the most understood by this person. How are you usually speaking to them in the instances where you feel the most heard and most understood by them? That's how you want to communicate your boundaries. And again, I statements make all the difference. When I say clarity, what I mean is there should be clarity in terms of what the current situation is as it stands, followed by what your response is to that situation that you're currently in, and what you won't allow moving forward, what now the boundary will be. I think you can use like an example of something where you want to make it clear, let's say that you're not open to compromising on this thing and this is a non-negotiable. So you would start by saying what the previous situation was, how you guys interacted previously. So once you have now stated your new boundary, to just make sure that it's clear that this is for real. You said what the current situation is, you said what your boundary moving forward is, and then to make it clear and tie it all off, it's I'm open to compromise on several things. This is not one of them. And that should make it clear that what you said, you actually mean it. I mean, the follow-through is important. You have to be consistent. It's not that now next time this thing happens, you're okay with it, you're cool with it, it's not an issue. You can be assertive without having to be mean or any of those negative things to the person. Another thing when it comes to reinforcing boundaries, sometimes you find that you've already stated this boundary over and over, yet it still keeps being disrespected or invalidated. In such a situation, I would say disengage from the conversation where your boundaries are being invalidated. Just simply disengage. You don't have to participate. It may be useful to have a realistic and actionable consequence moving forward in case your boundaries are continue to be disrespected. The key is that the consequence is realistic and actionable. You really have to sit, again, it's personal, reflect. How much does this relationship mean to you versus how do you feel that this boundary is being consistently disrespected, invalidated? How much more are you willing to take? What steps are you willing to take to make sure that this doesn't keep happening and that this person knows? Because sometimes people don't believe you until you show them that you're actually dead ass, where you feel like you've made it clear, you've done all these things, but then this person just doesn't seem to get it. You need to have a consequence. Now that you've gotten to this point where they clearly don't get it, what are you going to do about it? And then if they come back to you later on and they are now respectful of the boundary, what does that mean for your relationship? Does it mean that now the consequences get taken off the table? Does it mean that once you set the consequence, that's it and there's no turning back? What does it mean? Think about it. I think to tie everything up, we're just going to do the lower lash. I'm going to speed through this part just so you guys can see what I'm doing, but it doesn't take so long. So I'll just play some music. Okay, quickly, time to do my lips. I'm going to do a bit of lip balm first. I'm going to use a nude that has a bit of like a peach almost undertone. I've worn it over brown lipstick, over brown liner before, you can tell. It's more peach. And then NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Praline. This is like the best lip gloss on earth. Game changing, and it smells really nice, like I could eat it. And then just a clear gloss. And I think we're good. Let me go ahead and put on some jewelry and I will be back. Wait, actually, let me put on some inner corner highlight. Yeah, definitely think that was a good add-on to the look. Let me go ahead and put on some jewelry and I will be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. I went with some chunky hoops. I felt like that ties it all together. I'm not mad at how it turned out at all. To close out the video, I wanted to share this quote by Nedra Tawwab, which says, "We don't naturally fall into perfect relationships, we create them. Relationships take effort." That's the end of the quote. But relationships take effort, it takes time. Boundaries are a huge part of this. So I hope this video was helpful. I tried to keep it general so we could cover all the bases. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.